Hi guys, so welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here then of course welcome. I'm Danielle and I have been trying to get back into reading books for about the last year and a half now. When it was 2018, 2019 and I lived in London, I had several hundred books, but I did then move abroad and got rid of most of those in the process. I did keep a few in storage and I do have most of them back behind me now. But the other ones that I've got behind me, I've since got in charity shops or thrift stores if you're in the US, as well as the works, very odd one from Waterstones as well. But I definitely think that I have probably more of a cookbook problem than I do a normal book kind of problem, mainly because I will attempt to get books from the library. If there's one that I want to specifically read, I will always check to see if it's available to either get straight away or place on hold at the local library. But it's hit and miss as to whether that is possible or not. But with that, I have actually recently gone to charity shops and got quite a few books that I will be needing to find a home for. But I also wanted to go through what I've been reading recently and whether they will be staying on the shelves or whether they themselves will be going to a charity shop to be given another life somewhere else. So let me go through what I've been reading recently and whether I'm keeping them or not, and then I'll show you the new bits and bobs that I picked up as well. So one of the first books that I read recently, about a month ago, was 5 Bad Deeds by Thrift. Now I have just ordered here the Cat Kinsella series by her, and I really loved these. So I wanted to pick up 5 Bad Deeds, and I hoped that it was going to be not necessarily similar, but I figured that maybe the writing style would be similar, that it would have a nice flow to it and that it'd have really engaging characters with a nice bit of development where you sort of felt mildly connected to them in here. But I didn't particularly. I didn't find Ellen Walsh or any of the characters in here to be standouts, to be the one that made me pause and think, wow, this is all not going very well, but at least there's this person in here. The way that this was written to me could have been done slightly differently, because the blurb talks about the 5 bad deeds and everything, but I'm not sure I picked up on the 5 bad deeds in here. I think if it had been structured as being bad deed 1, bad deed 2, it would have been perhaps easier to pick up on. Did Ellen do wrong things, questionable things, things that perhaps she shouldn't have done? Yes. Were there 5 of them? I don't really know. I don't feel like there were. If there were, then they were so well put in there, it didn't make it obvious enough. Which, if your whole point is could the 5 bad deeds that come back to haunt her explain why things have taken such a deadly turn? If that is the whole plot point of this book, which, you know, it's about this mum, Ellen, her partner, she's got a teenage daughter, some twin boys. They're in this little village, in this house kind of near where her partner grew up, and, you know, it seems to be a friendly kind of neighbourhood, but she gets a sort of a letter, things keep getting worse, and sort of Ellen is trying to figure out if she's to blame for it, hence the 5 bad deeds. But I've been thinking about it and I keep trying to think, and I can think of, like I said, several bad things that have happened, but I'm not sure I'd call them bad deeds. And perhaps that's just me having a different definition of a bad deed. But like I said, I think if it had been structured slightly differently to be more focused on a break point of each one, it would have been a lot easier to identify. And I think that honestly, I probably would have preferred that, because it would have been a kind of a crime mystery, sort of breaking it down bit by bit, sort of analysing the situation and what caused it and what happened. But yeah, so now I'm torn, because I obviously love the rest of Kaz's books, but I didn't particularly love this one. So for now, it's going to stay on my shelf, but this is one that in the future I might end up getting rid of. But it was definitely a sort of a 3.5 star read for me, and I wouldn't go kind of beyond that particularly, just because, like I say, it was all right. It just wasn't super fantastic. Now, I read this a little while ago, probably around Christmas, maybe even the end of last year, and it's All the Rivers by Dorit Rabinyan. And this is another one that it was all right. It was good. It had really good moments in here. It's basically, in short, about Liat being from Israel and Hilmi being from Palestine. They meet each other in New York. They basically end up having a relationship, but then they both have to go back to their respective sort of countries. And they obviously have to figure out how to deal with that relationship, even when they're in New York, in terms of society, politics, their upbringing, their background, what they think of the world, and what that impact and how that impacts them, what that means for their relationship, and whether they can ever truly be together. And it definitely is good for bringing in some kind of basic points on that conflict that you might not think of, because they're more mundane day-to-day things of they've met people outside of that surrounding, but they have preconceived notions. They've obviously grown up sort of being indoctrinated to think certain things about the opposite country, the people of opposite countries, the people of their respective religions, all those sorts of things. And, you know, it's something where if I went to New York myself and met a French person, you know, it wouldn't have the same tension, because yes, there would be cultural and societal political differences, but it's nowhere near the same. It's completely different. And it was good to I think the book was good at highlighting how those kind of struggles can still take place. There are obviously conflicts all across the world where there will be countries or parts of countries that have divided opinions, but there's definitely not one that is as prominent to people as sort of Israel and Palestine. So it was good to read it in that sense. And I definitely enjoyed moments of the way that their relationship developed. But I would say that, to me, this book is trying to get across that love transcends borders. It transcends all those things. You fall in love with who you fall in love with, and you can't do anything about that. And you just sometimes have to try to accept it, and you have to hope that society accepts it. And if they don't, you have to navigate that. But the love kind of relationship sort of stuff in here sometimes fell flat. And I'm not saying that I wanted it to be really intense actual romance. I don't think that would have helped this book. But I feel that it wasn't full on enough in the way of them actually seeming to be passionate for each other in the right ways. It mentioned the arguments, the disagreements. It mentioned more of the negative than it did of the good. And I think that perhaps goes against, or is a bit counterintuitive, of what this book is trying to show. And for me, that just bothered me. So I have decided I will be getting rid of this one. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I picked it up in a charity shop at the time. It was a really, really good read in terms of it being a pleasant read, it being a nice read. It's probably what I would call kind of a holiday read, or a very quick, short read in general. You know, it is a very short book, and it was fine. It was fine. It definitely could have been a lot worse, but it could have been slightly better, and I wouldn't be going back to reading it again. So I would rather try to get rid of it and see if it is somebody else's perfect book, but it isn't mine. Another one that I will be getting rid of, and I only read this sort of a week or so ago, but that is Dolly Alderton's Everything I Know About Love. The thing about this book is this is one that I put in storage back in 2019 because I just got it as a birthday gift. I really desperately wanted to read it. I'm not sure whether if I'd read it then, I'd have had any different opinions on if I'd have read it when I have. But I am in my early 30s now, and this book is the one that includes the chapter on sort of be turning 30 and everything. But I couldn't relate to most of this book. The nearest I got to being able to relate, well, there were two things. One being the bit where you'd go on MSN Messenger, you talk to people you never met, you develop friendships, relationships with them, you know, it was kind of the social hub at the time of meeting people and getting to know people and spending time with even your friends. The other bit I The other bit that I could relate to was the bit where she feels that she doesn't necessarily fit in. She doesn't know what her purpose is. She doesn't feel comfortable with herself. And I think that that's something a lot of people feel, especially if you happen to live in a big city in London. You're not sure where your career is taking you. You don't necessarily have a relationship or whatever it might be. All those kind of things are very common experiences for people, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, she's there with this huge support network of family, of friends, of flat shares, with she even mentioned sort of her boss and things, asking her what's wrong and going on. And I feel that that isn't quite the same experience as a lot of people in London or big cities or even just the world in general, where a lot of people feel so alone and isolated. I know that when I lived in London, I was surrounded by people that I felt alone constantly. And that's probably the extent of what I can relate to in this book, because I didn't grow up in essentially a middle-class household in the suburbs, going to a fancy school with other people that live in similar circumstances. Didn't go on fancy holidays with my friends abroad. I didn't go off and do party, and I didn't have house parties. I never did the flat share thing. So many of those things I just couldn't relate to. And I know that for a lot of people, perhaps this book is really relatable. It rings true, it resonates, it makes them think about themselves, it makes them understand moments in their lives. But for me, it just didn't do that. So I'm aware that this is a very good book. I understand why it won Autobiography of the Year. I know why people love it. But because I can't relate to most of it, most of the stories just feel so far-fetched and beyond comprehension to me as ever being a possibility or something that could have ever at any point in time happened in my life. I just felt like I was reading somebody's wonderful world that, yes, had its problems, and I wouldn't wish those problems on anybody. I wish Dolly hadn't gone through some of those things. But it felt like a dream world. It felt like a completely different universe to the one that I could ever imagine existing. So I will be getting rid of it, and again, I'm sure somebody else will enjoy it, and it will be fantastic. But for me, I'd rather it didn't sit around on my shelf when I know I didn't love it. And there's a theme here. Another one I am getting rid of is The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. I've read The Muse by Jessie Burton before, and I didn't particularly love it. I found the story itself good. I'll rephrase that. I did find the story itself good, but I found there to be several problematic bits about it. I found that some of the research that was done, some of the way that certain things were portrayed in that book were problematic. But everybody talked about The Miniaturist at one point, and I wanted to see if this was any different, whether, obviously authors can do different styles, they can do research differently, they can present their research in different ways. And I think that this was done fairly well in terms of that. It wasn't super heavy on the research. It was small bits here and there, small snippets, small bits that were, believable in terms of the way that sort of obviously relationship, sexual identity could have been presented sort of in the 1600s, Amsterdam. That's all believable and completely put into this book in a reasonable way without it being overbearing. And, things like the sugar trade, sort of the Dutch influence on trade across the world at the time, definitely something that I then went away and researched. I do that quite a lot. I will read books that have some sort of historical snippet in them, and I will go away and research it to try and understand more about it for my own personal satisfaction, but also because it makes me curious to see how well an author's actually researched something, to whether something that they say offhand is actually anywhere near accurate. But for me, this book just didn't wow me. The story bothered me a bit. So it's about Nella, who marries an older person, moves to Amsterdam into the family household, and he gets her a doll's house, and she finds an advert for a miniaturist, and she commissions them essentially to create a few pieces for it, and then a few more pieces turn up, a few extra things that she didn't ask for, and the pieces seem to change, and She feels like she's always being watched by the miniaturist. She tries to track her down, all this kind of thing. And I feel that at the end, the plot took such a wild turn that the doll's house, the miniatures, the miniaturist were completely irrelevant. And they weren't irrelevant, but they were, because everything that would have happened without the doll's house. Nella just wouldn't have known anything or had any of those thoughts or been able to put pieces together before they happened. But everything would have still happened, and it's like the book is fighting itself of making the miniatures and the miniaturist and the doll's house super important versus here is the rest of the plot. And they're constantly fighting and trying to come together, and for me, it just didn't meld as I needed it to meld for it to have worked quite seamlessly. But it was all right. It was readable. I'm thinking the fact that I've read 2 of Jessie Burton's books, it probably means that her writing style, the way that she approaches things, just isn't for me. So I am going to get rid of this one as well, and try not to pick up any more Jessie Burton books in the future. However much they sound good, because clearly they can sound good, but they just aren't necessarily working for me. And that is something that I did want to kind of point out as well, because for me, I've definitely, I could have very easily DNF'd a few of these books at different points in time. But I wanted to keep reading them at the minute, because where I am desperately trying to get back into reading and figure out everything again, I'm aware that the person that I am now is a different person to what I was, 5-10 years ago. And therefore, the books that I like in terms of the writing style, the plot point, the speed of the writing, the angles that they take, the politics that they bring into, all those kind of things have definitely changed. I have different viewpoints on so many things, and I want so many different things from those books that I'm trying my best, unless a book is really, truly, truly terrible, to make sure that I do keep reading through them from start to finish, just so that at the end I can turn around and say, this didn't work for me because I think this style of writing isn't for me. And I'm then able to look at plot points, authors, and glance through a few pages when I'm in a charity shop or in an actual bookstore to be able to see whether something will be for me. Do I know whether to actually pick it up, or even especially when I'm in the library, to just be able to figure out whether it just is a pretty cover, whether it has a nice blurb and that's the end of it for me, or whether taking a look at a few pages, it actually reads well and I'd want to keep reading it. So that's something I am trying to get better at doing. I do have a selection of books here that are all by Kate Furnivall. I've read a couple of them a long time ago. I want to reread them probably, but I will be keeping all of those. I have 2 books here that I got in the charity shop a fair while ago. I might not have got them from the charity shop actually. I think I got them from like the free kind of library where my mum lives. But they're both by the same author. So let's hope that I like them, because otherwise it's going to make reading the other one a bit of a challenge. And then I have a few more books that I've all picked up in charity shops, sort of the free library along the way as well. So that's definitely a bit of a trend on that shelf. But then over here, I have some classics that I haven't read any of at the minute, but then some more books that I mixture got in the library and in the charity shop. One that, again, I took out of storage. And then the other ones here, I purchased in Waterstones in the Works, and I think this was another free library one. Here I have my Spy X Family books, which I absolutely adore. I still need to read number 15, and I will mention it probably in a future video when I do get round to reading it, because I'm thinking about doing it so I do kind of more reading vlog style. So I tell you what book I'm reading and what book I sort of, as I trundle through it, and I'll probably try and do 5 books or something in one, so they'll either come once every few weeks, or it could take once every few months, depending on how much I'm reading and where I'm at in my life. And then at the bottom, I just have some of my favourite books including The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. I have The Melmoth that I still need to read. I pre-ordered it all the way back there. I took it out of storage and I've still not got around to reading it. I have some Naomi Novik books and then the full set of Ben Aranovich books. And then I have 3 of the Natasha Pulley books down here as well. I want to reread 2 of them before I read the 3rd one. And I do have lots more on sort of my Amazon wish list and things that I want to get by Natasha Pulley as well, because she's definitely one of my favourite authors. But at the minute, I'm not going to touch on it too much, but I am currently reading The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I'm about, I want to say, just over a third, maybe even just less than a half the way through. Now I'm really enjoying this one. It's probably one that I will be keeping on my shelf. But like I said, I will talk about that a little bit more in my next book-based video. But if you do ever want to see what I'm kind of currently reading or what I've recently been reading, then I will leave my Goodreads and my Storygraph below as well. And if you ever fancy participating to the shelf chaos, then I'm always welcome to hearing suggestions and things, either in the comments or by dropping me a message or something as well. But I will show you the other things that I picked up now in the charity shop as well. I haven't taken the labels off of them or anything, so some of them I will probably have a little bit of a battle with. Let me try and see if I can at least figure them out in terms of putting them into the order that I got them in the charity shops, because I did end up going into town and there were 3 different charity shops that I picked up, or that I went into, I should say. Yeah, I went into town. I wanted to get some fresh air, as you do. And I went into the charity shops. And there are basically 4 or 5 charities. There's 5 charity shops there, but only 4 of them really do books. So I went and got books from 3 of them in the end. I went into one of them and they were definitely all, more of them seem to be leaning towards kind of horror, but I don't really do particularly horror. I'll do like thriller and mystery and all that kind of thing, but horror isn't really my vibe. So I did go into Scope and I looked on their normal shelves and I picked up The Moonday Letters by Emmy Iteranta. I should have looked up how to say some of these names first, I think. But it's basically part space age epistolary, part echo thriller, and a love story between 2 individuals from very different worlds. Sol has disappeared. Their earthborn wife, Lumi, sets out to find them, but it is no simple feat. Each clue uncovers another enigma. Their disappearance leads back to underground environmental groups and a web of mystery that spans the space between the planets themselves. Told through letters and extracts, the course of Lumi's journey takes her not only from the affluent colonies of Mars to the devastated remnants of Earth, but into the depths of Sol's past and the long-forgotten secrets of her own. And I just figured it sounded like quite a fun kind of book. It sounded like it had a nice little plot, I suppose, compared to some of them. It's not necessarily something that I've super read before, but I did just like the sound of it. And then there's also just a random little bookmark in here, a box of stories bookmark that suggests that somebody got halfway through it and then gave up. But there we go. The other book that I got from that same charity shop again, so from Scope, was Impossible to Forget by Imogen Clark. And this is one here. See here. Just turned 18, Romany is on the cusp of taking her first steps into adulthood when tragedy strikes and she finds herself suddenly alone without her mother Angie, the only parent she has ever known. In her final letter, Angie has charged her 4 closest friends with guiding Romany through her last year of school. But is there an ulterior motive to her unusual dying wish? Each of the 4 guardians possesses an outlook on life that Angie wants to give her daughter as a legacy. 3 of them have known each other since university. The eternally nomadic and exotically named Tiger, the shy and practical Leon with his untapped musical genius, and Maggie, a brilliant lawyer who doesn't know her own abilities. But the 4th guardian is a mystery to the others. They've never even heard of former model Hope before. As the guardians reflect on their friendship with Angie, it becomes apparent that this unusual arrangement is as much about them as it is about Romany. Navigating their grief individually and as a group, what will all 5 of them learn about themselves, their pasts, and the woman who's brought them all together? It just sounds like a nice kind of simple story, and one that's, suppose in a way, somebody that is doing it's kind of a coming-of-age story, but it's also definitely not at all. And just sounded like a nice kind of read, and I definitely want to know more about this other person. Then the other thing that I got, so both of those were £1 each. And then I also, as I was heading towards the actual shelves, not the shelves, from the shelves to the till, I spotted that there was this here, and it's the Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. God, I can't get my words out today. Complete collection. So it's got 1 through to 5 in here, and it's just a really nice looking kind of set. And I appreciate the fact that it is all in smaller books to be able to read them that way instead. So yeah, I did pick this up. It was £5. So works out as what, £1 a book. So decent enough in terms of sort of the price point. But yeah, I've obviously watched it and I love watching it. So I will be curious to see what it's actually like to read, to how it compares. But then let's think to what this bookshop would have been. Yep, so this was in the RSPCA, yeah. I got 3 books in there. So I got The Hoarder by Jess Kidd. Now, I'm going to let you into some of my YouTube watching habits. I watch a whole variety of things, from food videos, obviously book content, but then I also watch project pans and declutter kind of videos. But also I watch some people that do things that are a lot more cleany, in the sense of sort of the space maker method, for instance. But The Hoarder is about unintentional psychic Maud Drennan arrives to look after Castle Flood, a belligerent man hiding in his filthy cat-filled home. Her job is simple: clear the rubbish, take care of the patient. But the once grand house has more to reveal than simply its rooms. There is a secret here, and whether she likes it or not, Maud may be the one to finally uncover what has previously been kept hidden. And obviously it isn't just purely sort of a clean and declutter kind of thing, but I obviously love kind of mystery kind of things. So I figured that would be a good one to sort of give a read and see how I get on. These ones are all £1.50 as well. But then I picked up The Maid by Nita Prose. And the thing that bothers me about charity shops is where they put some of the labels. Right, makes it, had to kind of, there was some of the ones I'll show you later, the amount of effort I had to go to just be able to read the blurb. Right, so this one is, it begins like any other day for Molly Gray, silently dusting her way through the luxury rooms at the Regency Grand Hotel. But when she enters suite 401 and discovers an infamous guest dead in his bed, a very messy mystery begins to unfold, and Molly's at the heart of it, because if anyone can uncover the secrets beneath the surface, the fingerprints among the filth, it's the maid. So a nice little kind of crimey detective, figure it out yourself kind of book, which sounds fantastic to me. And then we have, by Suzanne Kelman, A View Across the Rooftops. And it is basically, from my understanding, is perhaps interesting, given the book that I'm currently reading is also based on sort of the World War II and everything. But this is, would you risk your life to save just one person? 1941, Nazi-occupied Amsterdam, Professor Joseph Held has never recovered from the loss of his beloved wife and has no intention of ever letting anyone new into his quiet, safe world. It is a world where the clocks tick steadily in his mathematics classroom, where every equation has a solution. Michael Boom, Joseph's student, is everything Joseph is not, spontaneous, poetic and unafraid to love, even though his passionate relationship with a Dutch girl named Elke, I'm not too sure, is strictly forbidden by the Nazis, for he is Jewish and she is not. Desperate to give Michael and Elke's love a chance to survive, Joseph gives him refuge in his attic, an act of impulsive bravery and resistance that will change both of their lives. But as the dark days of war continue, with danger and betrayal at every turn, no one can be trusted and no one is safe. If Michael is going to get back to the woman he loves, it is down to Joseph to find the hero inside himself and do whatever it takes to keep Michael alive. Oh. We'll see how we get on with that one. But I think it sounded enjoyable, so like I say, it's obviously kind of not necessarily full history, but it's got history elements in there, which like I say, I enjoy quite a lot. So then the last four that I got in the Prince of Wales Hospice, and this is what I mean about the label situation. Some of them have got stickers on, some of them don't, so I don't know whether it was just that one day the sticker maker was broken or what it was that was going on, but it does mean I have to very carefully unsellotape them all. So all of these were £1 each. And the first one I picked up was Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. And this one's probably more of a I'll either like it or I don't like it kind of one. But it starts with blood. Lenore is the wife of steel magnate Henry, but 10 years into their marriage, the relationship has soured. Then a shocking carriage accident brings the mysterious Carmilla into Lenore's life. Carmilla, who is weak and pale during the day but vibrant at night. Carmilla, who stirs up something deep within Lenore. And before long, girls from the local village fall sick, consumed by a terrible hunger. Set against the violent wilderness of the Peak District, Hungerstone is a compulsive sapphic reworking of Carmilla, the book that inspired Dracula, a captivating story of appetite and desire. So I figured that'd be definitely a bit outside my wheelhouse, but at the same time, it stood out to me and sounded quite interesting. So like I said, I'm either going to really love the fact that I stepped out of my comfort zone and picked it up, because, you know, I know it's not the same, but I do enjoy Dracula, Castlevania, all those kind of things. So I think it has the potential to be a really good book. So I wanted to pick it up and see what happened. Then I also picked up Emily Henry by Book Lovers. And see, the title stood out to me a little bit, but it is about Nora is a cutthroat literary agent at the top of her game. Her whole life is booked. Charlie is an editor with a gift for creating bestsellers, and he's Nora's work nemesis. Nora has been through enough breaks up to know she's the one men date before finding their happily ever after. To prevent another dating dud, Nora's sister persuades her to swap her city desk for a month's holiday in Sunshine Falls. It's a small town straight out of a romance novel, but instead of meeting sexy lumberjacks, handsome doctors or cute bartenders, Nora keeps bumping into Charlie. She's no heroine, he's no hero, so can they take a page out of an entirely different book? So I think it's definitely going to be like a romancy kind of thing, you know, sort of, to me it might just be a sort of a holiday romance kind of book, and it just sounded quite simple and cosy and nice. Now, one that I remember a lot of people talking about for a long time, once again I'm just carefully deselotaping the label, is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. And I remember this being on my wish list for a while, and then I completely wiped my wish list clean at one point. but I spotted it and I decided that I still wanted to give it a read. So for years, rumours of the Marsh Girl have haunted Barclay Cove, a quiet town on the North Carolina coast. So in late 1969, when handsome Chase Andrews is found dead, the locals immediately suspect Kaya Clark, the so-called Marsh Girl. But Kaya is not what they say. Sensitive and intelligent, she has survived for years alone in the marsh that she calls home, finding friends in the gulls and lessons in the sand. Then the time comes when she yearns to be loved. When two young men from the town become intrigued by her wild beauty, Kaya opens herself to a new life until the unthinkable happens. So, sounds like a lovely kind of book, like it has relationship elements, but obviously it's going to go wrong and there's going to be kind of a mystery element. But I just want to see what all the hype was about at the time, I suppose. That it seems like it could be my kind of book, but we will see. Now, this one, I was happy to spot. So this one, like I said, was also pan. This one has a nice normal label on it, but I've seen this one a few times in Waterstones. In fact, I used to see it in Barnes & Noble when I was in the US, but I could never bring myself to purchase it full price because it seemed like too whimsical, I suppose, to go and spend, in this case, $9.99 on, or what would have been $18.99 dollars. But that is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. So I've seen it around quite a lot. The covers always stood out to me and just made me kind of think, oh, and I remember reading the plot and thinking, this sounds like a good book. Like, so I remember looking at it in Barnes & Noble several times when I was in the US. I pondered it and I just always held back. But this is when Jeannie's aunt gives her the beloved Pumpkin Spice Cafe in the small town of Dream Harbour. Jeannie jumps at the chance for a fresh start away from her very dull desk job. Logan is a local farmer who avoids Dream Harbour's gossip at all costs. But Jeannie's arrival disrupts Logan's routine and he wants to do nothing with the irritatingly upbeat new girl except that he finds himself inexplicably drawn to her. Will Jeannie's happy-go-lucky attitude win over the grumpy but gorgeous Logan, or has this city girl found the one person in town who won't fall for her charm or her pumpkin spice lattes? So, sounds great. The reason I think that I definitely read a book called, I believe it was Home Sweet Home, where basically a person goes to run her uncle's stationery shop and meet someone, makes lots of friends and things. So I imagine it has a similar vibe to that, which I love that book. So I'm definitely looking forward to giving this one a read. But like I said, the fact that I spotted it when I've ummed and ahed about it for quite a while and it only been £1, I decided that I had to pick it up. So it's everything I ended up getting in the charity shops recently. And like I said, I now need to find some space for them on my shelves. But I'm hoping that they're all more hits than they are misses. But if not, then they will just go into the stack of books to get rid of. But there is also another book that I did want to get rid of. And that is Mrs. Hinch's Hinch Yourself Happy. Because I picked this up from a free library. And I had the best of intentions of being a book person. And a cleaning person. And many other hobbies. I can't do everything at once. And the reality is I will never be a cleaning person. I will never have things spick and span to the level of fancy Instagram accounts or whatever it might be. Yes, my home is clean and presentable, but I'm also able to go incredibly mess and clutter blind. And for me, when I go to clean it, I will give things a vacuum, but I'm not going to go to some of the extra efforts to do fancy things, especially not at the minute, especially where I rent. I don't want to do super fancy things, the carpets, sort of skirting boards or places that I wouldn't necessarily care about in the same way as I would as if it was my own home. But the point is that for me, I find when I do actually clean, I find cleaning therapeutic. I find reading therapeutic. I don't think I would find reading about cleaning therapeutic because then it would cause me to overthink the cleaning. So I'm gonna get rid of it. It can go into the stack. It can either go to the charity shops or into a free library, something like that. But that one can also go and make some space on the shelves. Something that will never make space on my shelves is I have all of my D&D books. Most of these are all advanced first edition. I have some 3.5s and the very odd book that involves second edition, which is useless because no one ever used second edition. Anyway, I then have No Place Like Homebrew, which I haven't really looked through very much, but I picked it up recently. Rather, my partner got it for me recently after I spotted it on a shelf and he disappeared and he came back out of the store with it. And then I have The Muppets as a kind of a sort of comic book. And then I have another sort of similar book, but not, and it's life drawing. And I really do want to give that a read. I just need to find the oomph to pick it up. But yeah, so I need to find some space to put these down and then keep trying to trundle through. But you probably will see me. I'm not sure how long it will take me to read 5 books. Like I said, I'm a fair way through this one at the minute. And then it will depend on what books I do end up reading next to how long it will take me to come back and do another reading update. But if you do want to catch up on the next one, then please do consider subscribing, hitting the like button on this one, just so that it knows to perhaps give you a bit more of a reminder when I do actually post the next book video. Like I said, my links will be down below if you want to kind of catch up with me in real time as well. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, especially because I've been rambling for so long. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care now. Bye.